All right. We are back at the Grit Won't Quit podcast. We are doing it virtual today. We have a very special guest on. We have Chris Connor from FMS, Franchise Management Systems, on today. How are you today, Chris?
Doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. This is a fun one because the franchising world is heating up. There's deals happening. There was a recent deal announced that's huge in our own backyard, and you're working on some pretty cool stuff, and you're working on something for Wingman right now. So let's dive into it. How did you get started in all this?
Yeah, so I came from a not so entrepreneurial family. My dad worked for a big company, and I always thought that was what you were supposed to do. Go get a job, focus on your 401k, however many years it takes, eventually you can retire. So that was my plan. I mean, I did everything that your traditional kind of corporate guy would do. Did college, did the MBA, because I heard you get, more promotions that way in a corporation. And worked for a couple of big companies. I realized quickly I absolutely hated it. It was like the bane of my existence. I felt like I could die and they wouldn't even notice until my paycheck started bouncing. So I knew I didn't love the big corporate environment. I don't know that I knew what that necessarily meant for me, but then I went to work for a company that did franchise development and got the opportunity not only to learn about franchising, but also about entrepreneurship. And
Mhm.
and I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I love small business. I love the passion, the energy. I love that anything you do or have to do with a small business means something. It has an impact, good or bad.
Absolutely.
It moves the needle. So I fell in love with it and worked for that company for 8 years, and then started my own after 8 years. But that was how I originally got into it.
And you learned everything about like everything that you needed to do, and you saw, the small business is hard. Like every job has a reason. It's not like a big co where, again, they wouldn't know. I came out of big co myself. I worked for a Fortune 500, then I worked for a Fortune probably 30, and then I was like, I could just do it better.
I think that there's a lot of people that see that opportunity come out of it. Like, I'll learn the basics, get a feeling, and then see there's an opportunity for it. But yeah, I don't think anyone who hasn't been an entrepreneur can possibly comprehend the amount of work, the amount of energy. When I was an employee, I thought 50, 60 hours was like an insane week. And,
Yeah.
and then you start your own thing, and like 100 is
You know,
not
it's crazy because like when you were for me when I worked in a corporation, like someone took out the trash, somebody ordered the pens, and you just had everything. It was just there. Like you called somebody and said, "Oh, we need something," and they're like, 20 minutes later, it was just dropped off at your desk. When you when you open your own business, you're like, "Well, who's going to do that?" And you're like, "Wait, that's me." But on the other side is as you grow, I think you start to figure out what it is that you could delegate, what it is you need to do, and what it is to start building out the procedures. I don't think any entrepreneur works less. People say they want to start a business so they can work from themselves and make their own hours, and I don't know anybody that works less than 40 hours, so we all lost on that bet. But it's also, I think, I've said it on this podcast, entrepreneurs are wired differently. They see it differently. They do it differently. They love the challenge. They love the hustle of it all. They love the chase. Whereas other people are like, why do you want to do this? Why? And most entrepreneurs own more than one business too.
That's true too. Yeah, I do think there's a different wiring. I also, though, I think I'm an example of it. You're an example of it. I mean, I think with the right ingredients and the right environment, there's a lot of people out there who would love to be entrepreneurs. They just haven't found the right path. They haven't
That's
the
true.
right situation.
I agree with you on that. And I think a lot of people are scared. Like I came from, parents that weren't business owners, and I remember telling, and my mom knew that I had a hustle and that I like to, I like to work and I like to, and I remember telling her, I said, I'm going to quit my job, and she goes, "You're going to quit your job? You get health benefits there. You get health insurance." And I said, I'm sure and I didn't even know at the time. I said, I'm sure I can get health benefits. There's people that own restaurants and businesses, like, I'm sure they have health benefits, not like, only big corporations have it. And she was like, "Yeah, but it's going to be expensive." And I was like, well, on the other side is if As long as you're making the money, you spend it on the health insurance. When I first left corporate, I stayed on Cobra just because it was easier, and it was something I didn't have to figure out right away. And you could pay it for 18 months, and you're good to go. But then as time went on, I was like, all right, well, there's other systems, other ways to do it, and now at this point we have a group benefit, which is it's still a lot of money, but it's just it's now part of the budget.
Well, I mean, insurance is one thing. 1K, a regular paycheck, all that stuff, it's hard to leave it.
Yeah.
The way that I kind of looked at that after I did make the flip was it was like you're so focused on the floor beneath you when you're working for someone, you're part
Yeah.
you're an employee, you're worried about the safety of it. When you step out on your own, that floor goes away, but you start looking up and you're like, man, look at all this opportunity. It's been right there, and I just never realized it.
That's a great way to look at it.
It just kind of flipped perspective. And but yeah, those things are hard, and unfortunately, in the last 4 years, insurance has become an insanely bigger thing. But still, I think it's a matter of finding that path. Once someone has that right opportunity and they see the path, then it's a no-brainer. I tell people all the time, and I'm sure you feel the same way, because you have the same energy and spark, that it's if not the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened for me.
Yeah.
My whole life changed when I became an entrepreneur, and I enjoyed what I did all of a sudden. I loved what I did. I was so excited to wake up. I had passion. I had enthusiasm. My kids have got to be up there. It's one of the better things that happened to me too. But it's like, man, if you find the right thing, you will be so happy you did. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm always talking to potential franchise owners, and trying to convey that thinking and that optimism. Because it's like,
I also think it gives you a lot more flexibility. Like when I worked in corporate, I was there from 9 to 5, whatever, 9, more than that, but like 8:30 to 6, and I didn't know a lot of things that happened that small business owners did. Like I didn't know what a chamber of commerce was. I didn't know what a BNI networking group was. And then like now, I have Wingman, and I have an investor in a transportation company. We do a lot of weddings, and we have trolleys and buses and stuff like that. But then I started doing a toy drive and a food drive, and like in corporate America, when I was working 40 hours a week or thereabouts 40 hours a week, I was like, how can I get a toy drive going? Like, I didn't think it was possible. Meanwhile, I worked 90 hours a week, and last year I collected over 10,000 toys that we gave to children in need. So like,
crazy.
I think you could just do so much more once like you're kind of on your own and you just can operate. You can just the sky's the limit on that.
It's definitely true. Yeah, I think, again, it just opens up your perspective. You start to see opportunities where before, I don't know, you're like focused more on the constraints and the obstacles when you're part of a bigger organization. And not to say being an employee is all bad. I think there's definitely examples of it being great, but I think the average person, the average employee out there, they're not happy. I mean, they're doing something that they feel like they have to do. And I think some percentage of people in that position could find happiness in their work, could find enjoyment and passion if they were able to find an opportunity to be an entrepreneur.
All right, let's spin this a little now. So you're in the franchise space. So it's your job to convey that message to people, to realize that that business ownership is a possibility, right? Like you could show anyone that comes to one of your shows or calls goes on your website or calls you guys can explain to them that it's there. And when I first went out on my own, I didn't really know about I didn't know a lot about franchise. I knew McDonald's was a franchise and Taco Bell was a franchise, but like I didn't realize like that there were business franchises or cleaning company franchises or Sandler training. Like there's all these different kind of franchises that have nothing to do with the restaurant space. I knew about the restaurant space because I think that's what most people know. But I think there's an education that people need to know about, like that there's business franchises. Like so, if you worked in corporate for 25 years and you just want to get out of corporate, you could have a franchise. I was talking to a friend of mine who worked with me when I was in corporate America, and I said to him something. I said, something with a franchise model. He goes, I don't want to get involved with food service. And I was like, but I think that's what a lot of people think of when they think of franchises.
It's definitely a pretty common misconception, and obviously the huge brands that you think of are food generally, but I don't know, the last like 10 years, I'd say that there's been a massive shift. Food service is less than half of the overall franchise market. I'd probably put it in the neighborhood of like 35, 40% maybe. There are so many different franchise models like Wingman, and these are businesses that more play to a former executive, to a white collar person that's coming from an executive position, sales background, a management background. They leverage those skill sets way more effectively. In my opinion, a lot of them are better offerings than food service. I mean, man, running a restaurant is tough. It's hard work.
Exactly. It's a very hard job. Like you're in there 80, 90 hours a week. Like the restaurants open 80, 90 hours a week. They open at 11 and they're open till 9. Like it's a long day.
So when you compare that sort of a lifestyle and that sort of an offering with something like Wingman, professional services, low investment, high margin, it's a lot of times it's kind of an easy presentation to get people to understand, and it resonates more with someone who came from that office environment, that professional services environment. But we've seen a crazy amount of growth there, what I would call white collar franchises. Also, home services has become massive.
Yeah.
Since COVID, it's become one of the biggest segments out there. That would be like landscaping, roofing, painting, window sales, everything that fits in there. But the franchise market is literally any type of business. I've probably worked with every type of business model out there, I would think, in every industry.
Hmm.
I can't think of too many that I haven't been involved with. Franchising at its core is basically a business model, a brand, some training, support, and access to a credible, proven entity that has been in the business long enough to be able to teach someone. I mean, that's it. So it could be accounting services, it could be home services, professional services, anything that we franchised a business at one point that literally herds goats into your yard, and the goats eat the trees and bushes. So it's like landscaping services
Hmm.
in eco-friendly ways, so you don't have the equipment and things with it. And it's like, man, if we can franchise goats eating your yard, then I don't
That's
think there's too many
crazy.
yet.
That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
So, and how did that franchise do?
good. She's got 17. She sold 17 units, so she did well, and was able to get some larger accounts like Costco and bigger commercial accounts because of her network. Gave her the ability to pitch a bigger capability of being able to do more stores and things. So took a unique buyer. I mean, you're literally sleeping in a trailer while the goats eat the yard.
Yeah.
but but it's cool. It's different, and there's
And she
another.
loves it.
Yeah. She's been doing it for a while, but we franchised a model that does like entertainment parks where you go and you drive tractors and they play basketball with excavators and like have games that you play on it and stuff.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's been literally everything from what you would think of sandwiches and hamburgers to some of the wildest ideas you could come up with.
Very cool. And now, who's your ideal client?
It's really someone who is it's any business owner that's in growth mode. So I wouldn't limit it to too much beyond that. Ideally, they have one or two, ideally more than one location. They have a proven model, 3+ years in business. They're able to show some track record of financial performance. What we'd like to see is an investment range that we can show a return on that investment. If it's a lower investment model, like a service model, year and a half. If it's a fixed location restaurant model, you can go like up to 4 or 5 years ROI for the franchisee to get their money
Hmm.
back. Good brand, some sort of differentiating elements to what they do that's unique in their space. But a lot of it just comes down to that growth mindset. One of the first companies that I franchised when I first started this company, I've been doing this for 25 years.
Hmm.
But when I started this company, one of the first brands was a company called Restoration One, and the guy had just started his business, 3 months in business. He knew the industry. It's like water, fire, mold remediation. So he had experience in it, but didn't have much of a track record. He had left a partnership with two other guys because he wanted to grow, and they didn't. They were happy doing what they were doing. If you looked at every metric, if you went textbook, you'd be like, this guy, he doesn't have a shot. Like, why
Yeah.
should he be franchising it? But he was full boat, pedal to the metal, knew what he wanted. He had a straight line vision. He wanted to scale, grow, and at some point have an exit. We franchised him after 3 months of business. He was working from his townhome, the basement of his townhome. His first year, he did about 600 grand, netted like 250. So the numbers were good. We sold three the first year, literally out of the basement of his townhome. He got an office year two. I think we sold five year two, 7 year three. He exited in 2019, 9 years later, for 238 million at 305 locations.
Wow.
I've worked with other restoration companies, one in particular out of Miami that was the best example of this. They did 15 million a year. They netted four. They've been in business for 30 years. We franchised, they sold one, and they quit. And their commentary was, we don't have the time to justify taking away from our business. We want to focus on that. You know, what this guy paid us, the $35,000 franchise fee, we can't justify spending the time on it. And they walked away from it. By all means, they should have been the more successful franchise. They should have scaled more. They're still at one location 20 years later.
Yeah, it's
And
hard. I get it. I get that. I get that because it's like it's like training employees. Like, it's that mindset of I'll just do it myself because I'm going to do it better. They don't know they're going to make a mistake, and they are going to make a mistake. They're definitely going to make a mistake, and I think the same thing's going to happen in the franchise space. Like you're going to tell the same person the same story. This is how you have to do it. This is the process, and But on the other side is if you can feel that as you grow, it's got to pay back on time. Like so, yeah, you got 35,000, and it's not worth it when you're doing 15 million. But on the other side is if you could take that 35,000 and get 500 of them, and then those guys are now paying a royalty back to the franchise system, and then you have that exit. Like those guys are never going to exit it to the numbers your first guy exited at.
no. And the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber,
Yes.
I know you know this book. I mean, I always reference it. So much of it comes down to that. And you're right, it's not just franchising, it's employees, it's everything about the business owner's mindset. Are you thinking growth? Are you thinking scale? Or are you focused on the minutia and caught in the operations? Because if you're stuck in the day-to-day, it's hard to think outside of the box and how to.
It's hard though. I see it from both sides. I get it, and I'm on my way there. But like I see it, like for me too. Like I'm taking time to talk to a person who may or may not be interested. Whereas I have customers who are want to talk to me right now about projects they have, and they're ready to to spend their hard-earned money to invest in their marketing or invest in their website or their business solutions, right? And then you have a person who may or may not, it's a tire kicker. Well, did they do it the right way? Didn't they do it the right way? So I get it, but if you're looking at that longer term vision and you know that you're going to do the training and you're going to have the right mindset, it makes sense. It's just getting over those short-term obstacles.
It's tough. The first, well, it's true of like any startup. And when you
Yeah.
franchise your business, you are a startup. You're a new company. The customer now becomes the franchise buyer. The price point's different. The sales process is different. And it's slow going for the first year, 2, 3 years. It takes a lot of effort. You don't typically see the amount of money come back for the effort that's going into it.
Yep.
Like anything, if you nurture it and water it and take care of it and show it love, it turns into something that can be way, way bigger than what you can do with your own two hands. And that's
Yeah,
the
sure.
thinking. But to your the exit thing though, that's one thing that I've seen in the franchise market, that if you're not in franchising, you may or may not like know this or comprehend it. One of the big tough parts of being an entrepreneur is what we're just talking about here, is that you as the entrepreneur become the number one employee, and you become the most important single asset to that business. You're doing so many jobs, you're doing them effectively, efficiently. You're doing a lot for it. Most entrepreneurs are. When you go to sell your business, if everything you're doing comes back to you, it's not worth that much. So
No.
you end up having a business that you put how many years into, how much blood, sweat, and tears into it. And a business like mine, where I'm a consulting, transactional sort of a business, we're selling franchises. I might get 1.5 times my net. So if I net $100,000 a year, the business is worth 100, 150,000. I might get 2, I might get 3, but that would be a good sale. In the franchise model, that ratio goes up to 18, 20. We had a brand sell for 37 times earnings 2 years ago in the insulation industry.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you get that crazy multiplier is when you duplicate it and scale it, you're proving it's not the owner that makes it go.
Yep.
That I can teach this. There's a system, there's a process to it. And heck, you just mentioned Jersey Mike's, and we were talking about before. He sold that thing for $9 billion at a 20 multiplier. There's no way if you own those restaurants and ran them yourselves, you're getting more than 2 or 3 at
20,
max.
20 times, that's 20 times cash flow?
Cash flow. Zaxby's sold for 19 times the Goldman Sachs. Same thing. It was like 7 billion. So these are happening because they've proven they've got a platform. And the other side of the question might be like, well, why is someone paying that much for it? Because their perspective is they can come in, plop a whole lot more resources into it, take Jersey Mike's from 3,000 to 6,000 and flip it, in 5 or 10 years for
Yeah.
a big multiplier. But those are obviously like the Wall Street Journal cover home runs. There's a whole lot of huge wins that we've seen that weren't that scale, but where people were able to build something they could have an exit. We had an estate sales company. She had one location. She sold it for $26 million, 5 years into it with 40 franchises. We had a cleaning company with 60 franchises, sold it for $7.8 million after 3.5 years. I mean, there's lots of those that don't necessarily make the front page of Yahoo Finance, but they're still
But
huge
they're there.
wins. Yeah, and that's we see a lot of that too.
So I was just saying, what percentage of businesses on average are franchises?
So I would say about 10% of the overall, like if you look at the whole U.S. small business market, a number of businesses, probably
Uh-huh.
about 10% of them are franchised. There's
Okay.
about 800,000 franchise units in the U.S. That are people that have bought into a franchise system and own a franchise unit. So it's a big market. It's not, it's not exponential. I think when you're looking at the franchisor side of it, though, it's much more select. So how many businesses like Wingman that have become a franchise? I mean, shoot, you're probably looking at a couple of percent. I mean, it's really a unique small group that have not only a business model that's capable of it, but a vision for scaling it and growing it.
And a crazy founder, right?
It takes a little bit of that, and that's okay.
There you go. So
Takes a little.
when you look at like a business, you said like home services, professional services, those guys are on the rise for franchises, as well as the restaurants are still a very popular franchise system. And how do you see like 2025 and beyond playing out with the franchise market?
COVID was really good for franchising. I think it kind of helped push people over that we were talking about before, wanting to become entrepreneurs. A lot of people, whether they had a job and like lost it or started thinking about what can I do for myself. We saw our business grew by about 4 or 5 times during COVID, from 19 to 20. Well, this year we're about 4 times bigger. It did slow
That's
down
great.
this year. Yeah, I mean it was awesome. It was awesome. It did slow down a little bit this year, and I think we saw it overall economy probably 10-15%. It seemed like we felt that in the last month, and this is before elections. I think the election will help, having that past us, but we saw it started to pick up again in the last month. We actually had our best. No, this month we're on pace to have our best single sales month we've ever had in 15 years.
Wow, great.
So
Congrats.
yeah, Thank you. I think it's coming back. I think the coming year is going to be awesome. You know, I think that having a small business friendly ecosystem too is going to really support optimism and people looking to get in their own business too.
Sure.
So we're overall really optimistic. I think it'll be a record year in
All right, that's
25.
great to hear. So now let people know, like, as we wrap up this conversation today, this was a great chat. I've learned a bunch about franchising, and you know, and in full disclosure, just so anybody listening, Wingman has retained Chris Connor and his company FMS to help us get our FDD and our franchise documents rolling. We were in the interview process for a few months, and we felt that these guys would be the best for us. So we hope to push our first franchises by the end of the first quarter, 2025. So Chris, as we wrap up today, let people know where they can find you if they're interested in talking about becoming a franchisee or have a system that they want to franchise.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So excited to be part of Wingman too, and really, I think this year is going to be a phenomenal year for Wingman as we scale it up and start to roll it out here. So I'm just thrilled to be part of it with you. And I see our relationship going in so many directions too, beyond just the franchise model as we've talked about. So I just couldn't be happier and more thankful for you choosing to work with us.
It's going to be great.
So our website is www.fmsfranchise.com. My cell phone is 770-519-3910. Always love talking to entrepreneurs. I welcome anyone. If there's any interest in franchising or anything having to do with franchising, do not hesitate, reach out, and would love to speak with you and love to help in any way that we could.
All right, this was a great conversation. Thanks for coming on 9 o'clock on a Friday morning, and I look forward to our continued working relationship and launching everything.
Thank you, Tom. Me too.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.